That's your remote.
Okay.
Calm down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, okay, good.
Alright. So, yesterday, I decided I was going to go to Las Vegas, spend about $100,000, and I ended up winning $5 million in Las Vegas. So I decided after I was in Vegas, I was going to go to New York, go to Fashion Week, look at some designer clothes, pick up a couple things. After I went to New York, I decided to go to Paris. I was in love with Paris. Eiffel Tower, the food was delish. So I just got back maybe about 15 minutes before class started. Decided I was going to do my work 15 minutes before the class started. It's a lovely trip in New York and Vegas and Paris. Now, let me tell you this. Only thing wrong with that story is I was not in Vegas, I was not in Paris, I was not in New York at all, even though I would love to absolutely go to New York and Vegas and Paris all on the same day and win $5 million. It is not true at all. It's not a credible story at all. I would be sitting here lying and telling you that I went and did all of that. See, that's the thing about ethos. Ethos is about credibility. You have to have a credible source. You have to be credible, and your audience has to think you're credible. So, according to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, audience listen to and trust speakers who demonstrate positive ethos. Ethos is often conveyed through the tone and style of the message and through the way the writer or speaker refers to differing views. It can also be affected by the writer's reputation as it exists independently from the message. His or her expertise in the field, his or her previous record of integrity, and so forth. The impact of ethos is often called the argument's ethical appeal or the appeal from credibility. During my speech, I will tell you exactly what ethos is, how to establish your ethos, and a checklist, and also I will end my speech with a quote from Martin Luther King because he did establish ethos very well in every speech that he's ever made. There were so many different definitions of exactly what ethos meant, and I got some from the book, and here are a few. Ethos is the fundamental character or spirit of a culture. Ethos refers to the trustworthiness or credibility of the writer or speaker. Ethos can also be known as establishing credibility, and ethos can also be referred to as the ethical appeal, means convincing by the character of the author. Now, the last two definitions are what English professors consider what ethos is. And what Aristotle thought ethos was credibility. You want to be a very credible source. And most of the time, no one actually wants to listen to something that isn't credible. So if you're not credible, no one kind of really pays it too much attention, because it's like talking to a doctor and he's telling you about some dinner that he made. Are you going to believe a doctor who's talking about how he's this big-time recipe and he's a good chef and everything? I would want to listen to a doctor who's telling me what's wrong with me while I'm sitting in his office. Now, there are, in the book, it did talk about how to establish your credibility with ethos, and it says to use good sense, moral character, and goodwill. Good sense is having good knowledge of an experience with the subject matter. So if you're talking about something or you have a certain topic you're talking about, you do want to be very knowledgeable about it. You want to at least have experience with that topic that you are discussing. And then moral character, having a straightforward and honest presentation of message. Present with the utmost integrity so that your audience will regard you as trustworthy, and identify in the content or delivery of your message. So it just, with moral character, you want to be able to identify with the topic that you're talking about and know it, versus not knowing it at all. So if you can't identify with it, no one's actually going to believe it at all. And also, lastly, goodwill, show interest, concern for the welfare of your audience. I tried to really take from what that meant, but I couldn't really think about exactly what they mean by it, with that being said. And then also with ethos, you have to have a checklist of exactly what you're doing and your target and how you're establishing your target to the audience. So the checklist is, does the audience respect you? Does the audience believe you are of good character? Does the audience believe you are generally trustworthy? And does the audience believe you are an authority on this speech topic? Now, with that, you have to, when you do your speeches, and you include ethos in your speeches, because you do have to include them, because you do want to be very credible in your speeches. You have to make sure everything that you are saying and information that you are getting is very reliable, and that you do know exactly what you're talking about. And then the checklist, a man who used it like the best, I think, is Martin Luther King, because everything he did talk about was very credible, and he just spoke like from the heart. And because it is Black History Month, it is like a really good thing to be talking about a subject like ethos, because Martin Luther King did use it very much. And everything that, I think every speech that I've ever looked up, it was very credible, and he did speak to a lot of people about it. And with that being said, I will end this with a quote from Martin Luther King. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. As long as Negroes' basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. Some of you have come fresh from narrow cells, from areas where you quest for freedom, left you're battered by the storms or persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. Not a day would go by that somewhere a black person was treated unequally because of the color of his skin. And this is from August 28, 1963, when he was in Washington. So yeah, but a great man who used ethos very well in every speech that he's ever done.